By the turn of the 2010s, the Looney Tunes were in IP jail. Their film track record had drastically made a turn for the worse following the release of 2003's Looney Tunes Back in Action, a film that did so poorly at the box office it failed to recuperate its $80 million budget. Meanwhile, the Looney Tunes' frequent television outings had been stalled after the 2005 reboot, Lunatics Unleashed, collapsed in on itself with negative fanfare. The creatives at Warner Animation were honestly lost. Their two other major animated franchises, Scooby-Doo and Tom and Jerry, had been able to find at least somewhat of a rhythm, where at the very least they were relevant and new content was being released consistently under the studio's banner, whether it be new shows galore or a slew of DVD films that keeps the franchises relevant for years. Which is really funny because theoretically, Looney Tunes is a franchise that should be easy to solve. They're shorts. You don't have to have drawn out long season plots. Most of their stories can get solved in 7 minutes, so it could easily be handled like Tom and Jerry. But for years after the release of Space Jam, the disconnect on what to do with Looney Tunes keeps showing up. By the end of the 2000s, though, they had an idea. The studio conceives a pilot by the name of Laugh Riot. Laugh Riot, from what we've been able to see of the project, seems to be an attempt to make a sketch show out of the franchise, where there will be roughly 3 7-minute shorts and a 22-minute episode, and work on the production begins in 2009. But by 2010, the project would falter based on executive disapproval with the show's direction from the pitch reel. But out of the work created, not all of it would be scrapped. Early into 2010, production would be resumed, retooled into the concept of making the Looney Tunes a sitcom, with each of the classic characters being fitted around a sitcom premise. Bugs and Daffy made roommates, various characters become their neighbors, and with whatever characters they don't know where to move them, they're just existing in the world casually. With the angle selected, the show would be officially launched with its first season of 26 episodes on May 3rd, 2011, premiering back-to-back with The Amazing World of Gumball. This is that show's story. So before we actually go through this season, I want to explain how I'm going to be unpacking the episodes. So, gonna say right here, there's a lot of episodes that I don't have much to say about. That's just kind of the curse of binge watching. So if you feel like your favorite or least favorite episode isn't getting the love it deserves, feel free to comment down below. I should be free to discuss my thoughts with you more there, and I'd really love to invite second perspectives on things. I am one guy, my opinions don't matter any more than anyone else, and I just decided to make a video on the subject. Likewise, if I see in the wilds you trying to use my reviews of this show to shut down anyone else's opinions on the show, or anything for that matter, I'm gonna Paddington stare you down. Yeah, this is very serious. Episode 1, Best Friends. When it comes to pilots, I think most times you find yourself in a position where you, the writer, don't really understand your show yet, and to be honest, Best Friends is kind of a prime example of that in action. Daffy Duck wants to go on a game show, he finds one about being best friends and gets Bugs to go with him, but he winds up being too self-absorbed for it, not knowing anything about Bugs, and they lose the show. And to be honest, I totally thought that when they lost, that was the end of the show. But it keeps going, and in the second half, it kind of solves things on a narrative level. Speedy calls Daffy out on being a bad friend. Daffy proceeds to get Bugs what he wants with a cruise ticket, and then they kind of do nothing until the dinner and then realize their friendship isn't about being the same as one another, and then they leave the ship. The episode's okay. I laughed a few times in it, but it has a lot of that pilot sickness that a lot of shows find themselves dealing with. 5 out of 10. Episode 2, Members Only. Daffy Duck sneaks away into a country club a la Dog Days and starts bringing Bugs as a guest. Then we get introduced to the show's rendition of Lola Bunny. Lola's immediately attracted to Bugs and it follows him on a nearly stalking level, to a point where a lot of these misunderstandings pile up and the two wind up planning a wedding, only for things to falter at the altar when Pepe Le Pew sneaks one in and gets with Lola. So, honestly, Lola is one of the characters I most fondly remember from the show, and I'm not gonna lie, she's kind of annoying in this episode, and it's very over the top. Most of the episode is just watching Bugs increase frustration with her, and I genuinely don't think they got her character down yet. Aside from that issue, this episode's pretty okay. I had a fun time. 6 out of 10. Episode 3, Jailbird and Jail Bunny. Bugs, Daffy, and Porky find themselves in the Grand Canyon, where Daffy litters and gets arrested. Daffy and Bugs get found in contempt of court and have to go to prison. Daffy continuously worries about his and Bugs' position, while Bugs has a shocking amount of patience regarding everything. They escape jail, go on a run, and then it's honestly just Bugs and Daffy bickering when chained together. They get caught again, they spend a year in prison, they are free. This one's kinda bad. The jail bickering is pretty obnoxious to get through, and rarely do the jokes here feel unique enough with the sitting aside from Bugs wanting to go back to jail. Porky's great in this, and this is unscripted now. I kind of think this episode's a leftover from Laugh Riot. I don't have any confirmation, but the whole premise of Jailbird and Jail Bunny regarding Daffy and Bugs in jail feels way more out of that whole sketch show element, and it feels like that script was repurposed here. I'm probably wrong, but if I'm right, that's gonna be cool. 3 out of 10. Episode 4, Fish and Visitors. Yosemite Sam blows his electricity trying to install solar panels, so he crashes at Bugs and Daffy's house for the meantime. And this episode's not great. There's the whole tired neighbor crashing premise that's one of the most exhausted premises in all of sitcomdom, and nothing feels new here. It's kind of cool to see Bugs and Daffy working together, but I don't really have anything to say about premises like this on a good day, and this one just isn't very good, especially this early into the show. I'd give this one a 3 out of 10. Episode 5, Monster Talent. Witch Hazel comes over to the house trying to find a positive role model for her son, Gossamer, and hoping Bugs could help out. But instead, it gets Daffy's attention, and Daffy tries to help Gossamer get less bullied with the school's talent show approaching. Meanwhile, Speedy Gonzales is looking for people to star in his pizza commercial, and reluctantly Bugs agrees to do it, and gets famous off of one line. This is probably the first solid good episode of the show. The talent show is a really fun pairing, and I really love the direction the show takes on Gossamer with. The Bugs plotline is also really, really funny. It's solid, it's 7 out of 10. Episode 6, Reunion. Daffy Duck gets a letter to go to his high school reunion. He lies and pretends that he was popular. Bugs tags along because the idea of a high school reunion fascinates him. And they reveal Daffy was never really popular, it was Porky instead. The flashback was wrong. That's kind of it. I like with this one Bugs' whole premise of never going to a high school reunion before. I kind of really love Bugs' character through this entire show. But this one's pretty bland in all honesty, and it's a standard high school reunion plot. I think the thing with the Looney Tunes show is it's trying to go for all these sitcom staples early in, and not understanding how to take a good spin on them. And that's why a lot of these earlier episodes are faltering for me. But for Reunion, it's a 4 out of 10. Episode 7, Casa de Calma. Casa de Calma is a really weird episode because it was the pilot for the Laugh Riot project. But it got retooled into the show, and it features Bugs and Daffy vying to get attention from a famous actress. This is pretty much the definition for me of bland and uninteresting. I don't really care about any of this whole thing. It's really out of tune with the rest of the show, pun intended. And I just think Casa de Calma could have worked for a sketch show, but it doesn't work in a sitcom where we're trying to care about these characters more long term, and it feels like a wasted episode. 4 out of 10. Episode 8, Devil Dog. The Tasmanian devil gets loose, so Daffy and Bugs try to find him, and it winds up bringing them to a dog show. This is another episode that I did not connect with. I know using a fan favorite character like Taz as a pet is a thing that a lot of fans didn't like, but I think it's a fine enough concept. I think the bigger deal that this episode showcases is the lack of depth in the show's roster of characters. So far, so much of the show's focus being solely really on Bugs and Daffy makes the entire thing feel small, and I think there's going to be a miscommunication on that whole front where you think, oh, you don't like the whole Bugs-Daffy dynamic. No, I like their dynamic, but the entire thing is it's usually Bugs, Daffy, and then maybe 2 other characters who get focused. Like, sure, you get the neighbors coming up or guest roles, but the best thing about the sitcom genre is its depth of characters. And I think Devil Dog really starts to showcase this issue coming to light. Either way, I'm not feeling it with this one. 4 out of 10. Episode 9, The Foghorn Leghorn Story. Daffy winds up auditioning for a Foghorn Leghorn biopic, and this is my favorite episode so far of the show. Foghorn and Daffy have this fantastic dynamic where the two mirror each other so effectively. I love characters in Foghorn's archetype. That's a thing that I kind of gravitate towards. You get an eccentric rich person or genius or whatever. I'm usually gonna really, really like them in whatever show I'm watching. It's also really nice seeing Daffy actually bond with another character when his entire trope so far has been that no one likes him. Also, the Bugs in Yosemite plotline is like mostly fine, and there's a pretty fun climax at the end. More like this episode, please. 7 out of 10. Episode 10, Eligible Bachelors. Porky holds a bachelor auction for literacy. Daffy and Bugs participate. Bugs gets snatched up by Lola, Daffy by Granny. And this episode's honestly another banger. It's just her second appearance, but Lola's way more likable here. And her and Bugs' blossoming romance is absolutely adorable. Daffy, meanwhile, hears Granny talk about being in World War II as a spy, and this episode's just really sweet on both story sides. But it feels like the first time the secondary cast is really being fleshed out, and I'm pretty excited for where this puts the show going. 8 out of 10. Episode 11, Peel of Fortune. This one's solid. Daffy feels bad for not having any money, so he James Somerton's Bugs design for an automatic carrot peeler, making the invention that made Bugs rich obsolete. Now the roles are reversed for a bit until Daffy's invention is recalled and Bugs has to fix it. For an episode that's pretty much solely Bugs and Daffy's dynamic, this one has it down better than any of the other episodes focused on just them, and I really like the ending here. I think the writers have definitely entered a rhythm at this point in the show's run, and the past 3 episodes have been pretty great. 8 out of 10. Episode 12, Double Date. The winning streak continues. Double Date's honestly one of the best episodes of the show yet, and I find it so funny how invested I am in the love life of the Looney Tunes, and it's genuinely really cute seeing Daffy and Tina connect for the first time. The entire gag or joke about this episode where Lola accidentally falls in love with Daffy from her own advice is one of the best jokes the show's made yet, and it keeps up why the show is really, really, really fun when it's a rom-com, and the stinger of this episode killed me. This is the best episode of the season so far, 8 out of 10. Episode 13, To Bowl or Not to Bowl. This is a really funny bowling episode with an ending that's great. I love the bit about Daffy lying with the music class twice and creating his own conflict for himself. I don't really have much more to say. A really good comedy is a really good comedy. 7 out of 10, pretty solid. Episode 14, Newspaper Thief. This one's fine. It's nice seeing the secondary neighbors a bit more, but especially compared to the last few, this one's just not very funny. It's not a bad time. I just struggle to think about Newspaper Thief as an episode in the slew of all these other ones. 6 out of 10. Episode 15, Bugs and Daffy Get a Job. They really pulled an Always Sunny in Philadelphia with this episode's title. I really like both stories. Seeing Bugs and Porky together is nice, and I'm really realizing the show's just mainly Daffy shenanigans, which is nothing wrong, but it's just very funny. Daffy's shenanigans remind me of Mr. Toad from Wind in the Willows. I don't know if anyone else has thought of that, but that's what I always think of. It's solid, it's funny, 7 out of 10. Episode 16, That's My Baby. Daffy has to babysit Tina's nephew. Meanwhile, Bugs tries to get Porky to stop taking upcharged priced items. The Bugs subplot's pretty cute, and the Daffy stuff's funny. Not much to say. Just solid. Wish we could have seen Tina more. 7 out of 10. Episode 17, Sunday Night Slice. After the favorite pizza place in town goes out of business, the gang decides to start their own pizza place, and they find out that they're bad at it. So, Bugs gives the restaurant to Speedy. That's how Speedy has the Speedy Pizzeria place that this show's been using so often. The episode's sweet, but very, very middle of the road. I'd give this one a 6 out of 10. Episode 18, DMV. The single funniest episode of the Looney Tunes show up until this point. Daffy and Lola don't have proper licenses, so they find themselves at the DMV getting stopped, with Bugs being the unwitting passenger for both of them. Then Porky's license is expired, so he has to also go there. And this is one of the best comedy of errors you can get with the DMV as the setting, where all the wrong people are licensed by the end, and it's absolutely delightful to watch. Great use of the established characters, really great jokes, and extremely clever writing make this the best one of the entire series so far. 9 out of 10. Episode 19, Off-Duty Cop. Daffy Duck decides to meet his idol, who's an action hero on a TV show. Meanwhile, Bugs is told by his doctor to quit coffee and gets scammed into trying an energy drink. This episode's fine, there's not really much to talk about. I guess by this point in the season, there's a lot of episodes that are fine, and it's just kind of blending in on itself. So for the episodes that I like but aren't favorites, I don't think I have much to say about them. 7 out of 10. Episode 20, Working Duck. Daffy Duck gets kicked out until he can find a new job because Bugs fears he's enabling him, which he is. But this results in Daffy getting a job at Enormocorp. There, he meets Foghorn Leghorn again, and when I say that Foghorn and Daffy have one of my favorite dynamics in the whole show, I mean it. It's really cool seeing Daffy have a connection with someone, and the two schemes work so well with each other. It also feels like it's funny because Daffy's always falling upwards, and he winds up getting into Foghorn's position by the end of the show, and it's cool. Just a really solid episode, 7 out of 10. Episode 21, French Fries. Daffy and Porky get into a fight over whose fries are at the table. This creates a tear in their friendship right before they have tickets to the big football game. Meanwhile, Yosemite Sam wants to kick a football to win money. This one's pretty middling and it feels all like generic sitcom sludge than the Looney Tunes show. I relate to Bugs and his whole trying to mediate a friend group, but this episode's just... I'd give this one a 5 out of 10. Episode 22, Beauty School. If I had a nickel for any time a lead from the Looney Tunes show dressed up as a girl, I'd have 2 nickels. And it's funnier because they're both from the same episode. Beauty School's a really sweet episode, and I love seeing things go well for all 3 of the characters for once, especially in a show where more often than not things go poorly. But this episode has some great character stuff from the entirety of the 5 main characters. One of the best of the season, 8 out of 10. Episode 23, The Float. So, whatever site I was using, because I can't use Max for this show, this episode showed up 4th. So, I watched this much earlier than I probably should have. So, for those of you who throw video essays on in the backgrounds, this entire show, Daffy's car has a, paper mache decoration of himself just sitting on top. It's very funny. But Daffy has his car's decorations destroyed in the car wash, so he decides to buy a yacht. And how do you fund a yacht? Well, to get the funding for the $375,000, he cons Porky Pig out of everything he has by claiming he needs a kidney transplant. Bugs finds Porky in squalor. Porky beats Daffy senseless, deservedly. The yacht gets lost at sea. The trio have to find a way back to land. Daffy shoves Porky into the water. Bugs saves Porky. Daffy jumps off himself and drowns in bed sheets. And then the doctors save him. Daffy needs a kidney transplant, which Bugs gives the money for, and Porky the kidney. This episode's really funny. Fun character work from all 3 of these leads, and it's crazy because we don't get to see the 3 so isolated often, but this one's fantastic, and the ending of Daffy getting everything he deserves there is very deserved. Porky is an absolute sweetheart, by the way, in the show. I think he's probably one of my favorites. He's so sweet and genuine that he just needs protection. Daffy's the worst friend for him. 7 out of 10. Episode 24, The Shelf. This one's fine. The show hasn't really felt annoying for a while, and I like some of these newer pairings, but I felt rather uninvested this time. 6 out of 10. Episode 25, Murder. Daffy Duck thinks that Porky Pig is a killer. Lola breaks her leg and gets help from Bugs, and we're hitting a bit of an end of the season low point where you just feel like the ideas are too basic and they don't feel fresh. And this is probably because I'm binging it, but regardless, 25 episodes in and things just don't feel fresh anymore, which is fair. It's a sitcom, but the tail end of the season kept us with these same characters over and over again, and the same problems I have here can be said about any sitcom. The comedy just didn't hit for me in this episode. So all that is just me babbling babbles to say Murder is a 4 out of 10. Episode 26, Point Laser Point. This is the last episode of the original order and season, and here's how it goes. After finding out Granny is on dating apps, Bugs and Daffy decide to give her company. Meanwhile, Sylvester has a weird relationship with a laser pointer and gets therapy. I'm sorry, I don't really like the whole psychology of the Sylvester the Laser Pointer. I don't care about his family life. He's been nothing but Granny's pet this entire show so far. This episode just feels like a waste and nothing. And as I was doing my research, I think I understand why this episode's as weak as it was. This was actually another one that, from what I've heard from the rumors, it's a repurposed concept from Laugh Riot, and they decided to make more footage for it and then package it as a full episode. And honestly, that makes sense with everything here. It's still a 3 out of 10. I'm gonna assume that the pieces of Laugh Riot that got repurposed here is Casa de Calma, Point Laser Point, and I'm gonna guess Jailbird and Jail Bunny was at some point part of Laugh Riot. No confirmation. It could have been just originally written for this show, but its structure feels was a sketch that was stretched out that long. 3 out of 10 episode. So that concludes the first season of the Looney Tunes show. Season 1 of the Looney Tunes show was a weird one because only briefly did the show find its footing, really. There's this stretch of episodes where they were on a roll, and once it got there, it was solid. But I think this very tail end of the season is much more fine. A 7 out of 10 is never a bad score, but it's just nothing that makes an episode stand out for me, and it's super clear by the end of the season that they were kind of running out of premises. If you're an outsider of the Looney Tunes show and you want to check out a season 1 episode to see how the show started out at its best, I'd say go for DMV. It's a genuinely hilarious comedy of errors that's the best thing that they did all season. And there's a handful of episodes of the show that do feel like they've got a spark, but on the flip side, so many of the other episodes feel like generic sitcom slop that you'd see out of any sitcom. And I really hope that the second season helps the show recenter and find focus, because outside of the standout episodes, I don't think I'd recommend curious viewers watch the season as a whole. I've been averaging the scores out in my little spreadsheets, and this season roughly as a whole is like a 6 out of 10, but at the very least, the second season is there and we can watch that, because we're only halfway through the Looney Tunes show. Intermission! So, for this video, I wanted to do an intermission to cover the 3 things from this era that I couldn't do in the intro or the outro. These being a review of the Roadrunner cartoons that they used in these episodes, a review of the Merry Melody segments that always accompany these episodes, and finally, diving into a weird Looney Tunes video game that was made during this era. So, viewers, sit back, relax, and enjoy a dive into everything else this era of Looney Tunes had to offer. The Roadrunner shorts. Attached to a good number of these episodes are Roadrunner cartoons made by the studio Crew 972. And I'm not gonna lie, these just aren't the best. There's something missing, I feel like, with trying to do slapstick in a lot of CGI environments, and the big thing is they all strictly go with this formula. If you've seen one episode, you've kind of seen them all. Wile E. Coyote wants to get the Roadrunner. He keeps failing and gets hurt. They're pretty skippable, and I don't really have much more else to say. Honestly, using the few minutes of these cartoons to flesh out the main plotline would have probably been beneficial for 90% of the episodes of season 1. On the other hand, the Merry Melody segments add a lot to the show's charm. Originally, I wanted to do a full-on ranking, and I might instead do it as a bonus video for Patreon, but that scope is a lot to dive into, and I don't want to do that for this project, so yeah. Across the board, I don't think many of these are songs I'd listen to on my own, but they're little charming little trinkets that you get from watching the show. And I'm gonna mention 5 of the highlights right about here. Lola gets 2 of the highlights, because Kristen Wiig's just that entertaining. We Are in Love is a melody so catchy and fun that it made it onto my liked songs on Spotify, but I think President's Day is the single funniest of these songs that they've released. Her naming these random celebrities as presidents is absolutely great, and they were on top of their game there. Long Ear Drifter is another one which I've heard and had stuck in my head with the pronunciation of carrot nibblers, and it's stuck there. Blow My Stacks, a song that I saw once as a kid and was entrenched in my memory ever since then, and this one doesn't really count, but the Christmas song after the Christmas special in season 2 is without a doubt really, really fun. I'd say go through and check these out if you like corny and campy things. you're more likely to enjoy them than not enjoy them, but the spectrum of quality runs the gamble. So yeah, that's the Merry Melodies. Meanwhile, during the show's run in 2013, Cartoon Network would launch a game on the website called Cartoon Universe, Looney Tunes, and Scooby-Doo. This would be the beta version of a project that would get ported to 3DS and PC in the following years. So, grab it on a Steam sale for $3.50 and prepare to dive into the only Looney Tunes game to really represent this era of the show. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you know that I don't cover video games, yet alone licensed shovelware. So, how do you judge bad shovelware? But I'm gonna borrow something that I can use as a solution for this. This is the Bad Games rating scale. It's been used to judge shovelware for the grand amount of time that we on YouTube call a month. First showing up and crafted by the channel Lee Speaks, so credit to her on this, and for giving me permission to use this so I didn't have to James Somerton it from her. I'm kidding, I wouldn't. But Cartoon Network starts with a player crafting a character from a grand selection of, you ready for this? This is gonna blow your mind. 4 models with 10 color palettes each, where the player is presented with 4 worlds. Now, you're gonna notice something funny. There's a lot more Lunar Tuners than Scoobert Dooberts, with none of the fursuits for the PC being in the Scoobert style, and even the dog barely looking loony enough to be toony. In the Looney Tunes world, the grand plot is a Blender short circuit's Daffy and Doug's house, and it's from this place called Mock Me, so they gotta return it at the store. And that's it. That's the plot of this normally $20, 10 years after being released game. Mind you, in this world, the characters can pop in and out, there's no real sense of scope, and these platforming levels are extremely generic with some of the most frustrating to use controls I've ever seen. I played this on stream trying to desperately make something out of this, and I rage quit it partway through, I'm not gonna lie. The platforming is just sucks. It's so bad. On the bad game scale, I'm going to be giving this a 1 point in funny because I didn't laugh, a 4 points in crispiness because it has some of the worst sound design since the decision to give recorders to elementary schoolers. Effort's none, so there's 1 point, nobody really tried here. Rage induction is a 2 because I got mad at it and I don't get mad very often. And a playability score of 1 because I may have played it for more than an hour technically on stream, but that was all because I was live. Giving it a total bad games rubric score of a 9, which I'm pretty sure is an F, and translated to the out of 10 score that I give things, I'd give this a 1. Weighing the points down because bad games scale don't account for the 10 scores. In addition, Cartoon Network released 3 Flash games to their website during this era. There Goes the Neighborhood, Coyote's Chase, and Behold the Wizard. And while I'm not playing these games for this video, I just wanted to mention that they existed because honestly, we miss cartoon website Flash games. Shout out to Nickelodeon.com, man, or the Cartoon Network website. I know for sure I've played on there for hours. Thank you, Fin and Bones, for being really, really hecking fun. There's one more piece of extra media that was kind of part of this era, but I'm gonna cover that after season 2. So yeah, we're on to season 2. Episode 1, Bobcats on 3. Daffy coaches a water polo team and Bugs gets addicted to Porky's catering. This is a very funny episode. Daffy and Gossamer have this really iconic friendship where he's just really funny when interacting with any child, or in this case, Jennifer, but especially with Gossamer, it contrasts so well. Also, Witch Hazel's like such a sweet mom character in this show. Like, there's a lot of people who complain about her portrayal where she feels more like a sassy woman than a character properly, but I really like the little tidbits that we get of her and Gossamer's family dynamic. It's really cute. This episode injects a ton of energy back into the series that the back half of season 1 was starting to lose track of. Not to mention the plots combining in a really funny way for this episode. Bobcats on 3 is an 8 out of 10. Episode 2, You've Got Hate Mail. You've Got Hate Mail is just this phenomenal episode. It's my favorite episode to this point in the show, and overall it's my second favorite one because it ups everything that I've been really loving about this. Daffy's hate mail plot's really hilarious, and the ending of this episode is so sweet and so special. There's not a single ending of the show that's like it. Bug's subplot also has a fantastic and unique way of ending, and I just think it's great. If you gotta watch an episode from this show, this is a great one to watch. 9 out of 10. Episode 3, Itsy Bitsy Gopher. Itsy Bitsy Gopher is a Lola and Daffy team-up episode, and honestly, it's kind of fun because they've not played with this combo of characters, but they bring out the best in each other and how dumb both of them are. One mild thing I noticed here is that Kristen Wiig performs her lines over a phone, I think, but beyond that, I think the episode's got some really great and funny moments, and I love the spider fake-out within this show. 8 out of 10, it's weaker than the other two, but it's still a really solid episode. Episode 4, Rebel Without a Glove. Rebel Without a Glove sees Bugs Bunny having a midlife crisis over losing his gloves, and Daffy becomes a professor, and the role reversal here is fine and several scenes are fun. I don't really have much to say about Rebel Without a Glove. I know this is one of the fan favorite episodes, but for me it was pretty good, but not one of my favorites. 8 out of 10. Episode 5, Semper Li. I think I love pileups of misunderstandings within comedies, and this episode's connections between its A and B plot are so tight, and I was dying of laughter. This is one of the other highlights of the show, one of the funniest episodes, 9 out of 10. Episode 6, Father Figures. So Father Figures is a really, really stacked episode, and that's really cool. We see Lola's dad team up with Bugs to win a father and son tennis tournament, which is really sweet and just gives some new insights into him because he's been pretty flat until this, but he's a sweetheart. But on top of that, we get another Daffy and Foghorn team up, and the two are brilliant together once again. I love these character archetypes, and Foghorn's probably one of my favorite characters in this show. Anytime he's here, it's an absolute treat. But on top of that, Porky gets a really, really sweet team up with Henry Hawk of all characters, and then the way the three of them collide in the end is absolutely brilliant. This is one of the show's other best episodes, 9 out of 10. Episode 7, Customer Service. Customer Service is the best episode of the Looney Tunes show. This is retroactively, I'm saying this also. It's the funniest episode. Every bit of this normal problem is taken to the most chaotic degree. Cecil's a delightful antagonist who might be the most evil character in the entire show, and Bugs takes their rivalry to another level because of this disturbance. Meanwhile, Daffy gets promoted to head of the customer service department and ultimately just decides to fire everyone. And then also, Tina and Lola team up for the plotline for one of the only times ever. This is a perfect episode of TV comedy, and I love it to pieces. 10 out of 10. Episode 8. Okay, this title's a long one. The Stud, the Nerd, the Average Joe, and the Saint. The Stud, the Nerd, the Average Joe, and the Saint keeps this series winning streak. The major plotlines being Daffy being broken by Porky competing in a marathon, so he decides to do it himself. Meanwhile, Yosemite Sam owes one to Bugs after Bugs saves him. And this episode's really great with endings that pay off really well. 9 out of 10. Episode 9, It's a Handbag. Daffy loses his handbag and Lola tries to get an anniversary gift for Bugs. It's fine. This is the weakest of the season so far, but it's fun enough. 7 out of 10. Episode 10, A Christmas Carol. So this is the Looney Tunes show's one and only Christmas special. And as someone with an affinity for Christmas media and the theater, this episode's cute. It's another Daffy and Foghorn team up, which I love, even though I've been giving them all 7 out of 10s. Their parts are great. But on top of that, the other plot's Lola putting on her interpretation of A Christmas Carol. And the plots are up my alley, but this one's mostly just good. I can't put my finger on it. Season 2 has not declined, but the past 2 episodes have felt like a period of stagnation for sorts. And the second wind might be fading, but there's a lot of fun here, and I still like it. 7 out of 10. Episode 11, We're in Big Trouble. We're in Big Trouble puts a lot of the season back on track. Witch Hazel heads out of town and Bugs has to babysit Gossamer, but Lola accidentally turns him into a frog. Meanwhile, the other story sees Daffy and Porky trying to find an expensive truffle to earn money. I know I've been pretty brief about most of the episodes of the show, but We're in Big Trouble is a pretty interesting episode. I think it's interesting how resourceful the show's been at using the deeper levels of its characters, where a lot of Season 1 felt smaller in scale because of the show rarely utilizing its roster. Season 2 has brought a boon on by not being afraid to bring characters in when they know to use them. But also, I think this episode represents what should hopefully be a shift for Daffy and Porky's friendship. Seeing Porky finally snap for the first time since the float is great. He gets put through so much nonsense in the show, and when so much of his character is just being the sweetest guy, he doesn't deserve it. Either way, We're in Big Trouble is the kind of episode that the worst of season 1 would bungle, but it's cool seeing where season 2 has grown by comparison. The standards for the season are a lot higher, 8 out of 10. Episode 12, Dear John. Lola thinks that Bugs gave her a Dear John letter and is breaking up, but Bugs thinks that she broke up with him, and it's a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Daffy runs against Porky Pig and winds up on a seat with the city council. The episode's fun. I think election jokes are fun. I would have preferred more of it, but the attack ad was hilarious. And y'all ever think about how there's like no way Daffy Duck wouldn't be a Trump supporter? Terrifyingly enough, Daffy Duck's like so Trump core, which it's oh gosh, I'm gonna get comments saying that I went political. Trump sucks. He would totally sell out anyone else for a bit more convenience energy, and either way, this is a pretty solid episode of the show, 8 out of 10. The last one for this half of the season is Daffy Duck Esquire, and it's without a doubt one of the other highlights of the show. In order to impress Tina's dad, Daffy Duck pretends to be a lawyer, and it's played for every inch of hilarity that you can get out of this premise. Fantastic episode, go watch this one yourself, I love it. 9 out of 10. Episode 14, Spread Those Wings and Fly. Daffy goes to a self-help seminar and decides he wants to fly. This episode's fine, I didn't get really into it, sorry, 7 out of 10. Episode 15, The Black Widow. The Black Widow sees Porky and Daffy getting arrested while spring breaking in Mexico. Meanwhile, Lola enacts a part of an action movie hero from a movie she likes and steals her family's jewels. This is another really forgettable one. The pairings are pretty fun normally, but this one just feels like a lot of nothing. The stuff with Speedy's fine, I guess, but it just was very blah and uninteresting. 5 out of 10. Episode 16, Mrs. Pork Bunnies. Bugs and Porky start a carrot cake business and Daffy decides to become a TV extra. And this one's also forgettable. It just has kind of a bad ending. I struggle to call this purely a bad episode, and it's a bit better than like the lows of season 1, but I can't really see any reason why to ever go and watch Mrs. Pork Bunnies of all Looney Tunes show episodes. 5 out of 10. Episode 17, Gribbler's Quest. Daffy gets addicted to online shopping, meanwhile Bugs gets addicted to a gaming handheld. Another forgettable episode. I think it's better than Pork Bunny or Black Widow, but I don't think I got anything out of this. It's pretty rough. 5 out of 10. Episode 18, The Grand Old Duck of York. Daffy gets into piano while Bugs gets noise-canceling headphones, and it's fine, pretty decent. There's a good bit of jokes in this one, and compared to a lot of the other episodes that we've just been going over, it's pretty solid. 7 out of 10. Episode 19, Ridiculous Journey. Taz, Tweety, and Sylvester get lost in Alaska. Bugs and Daffy are barely here. I don't really care. That's the biggest thing here. Like, look, Taz, Tweety, and Sylvester have been the characters retained as pets for the main characters. I don't care about them getting lost in Alaska because I barely see them as is. I don't want to watch an entire episode where the whole concept's them trying to get back from Alaska with like no one that I'm actually invested in. It feels like a sequel to that laser episode from season 1 and not a very good one. 2 out of 10. Episode 20, The Shell Game. Thank goodness. The Shell Game's another great episode of the show that comes down to the return of one Cecil Turtle, who's once again extorting Bugs for money after faking an accident with his shell. Meanwhile, Daffy and Lola are on a hunt for a recliner. This is a great episode following a sea of less than interesting ones we've been getting. I think Cecil's always fantastic to see, and this episode's a great appearance from him. So yeah, 9 out of 10. Episode 21, Year of the Duck. The Year of the Duck sees Daffy recruit Foghorn to make ducks popular after hearing they aren't in the Chinese zodiac. And it's a sweet episode. I think Daffy and Tina get a lot of really fun moments, and Bugs being the host is fine for the pageant. He does a good job. Good episode, 8 out of 10. Episode 22, Gossamer is Awesomer. Right off the bat, I love how this season's been building its continuity out. The Daffy plot's filled with callbacks, and as someone who's now watched most of the show, it's pretty lovely to see. On top of that, we get a rare episode where Bugs and Porky are at conflict, and it's super funny and reasonable for Bugs here. Porky's just too organized. Honestly, this episode's really funny, and you combine the two things that Daffy's the funniest with, kids and public opinion, you're sure to get a winner. Plus, I really think the ending is really sweet to see Speedy and Porky go into business together. Fantastic paying off both characters' arcs through the show in a lot of ways. 8 out of 10. 23, Here Comes the Pig. Porky goes to the wedding of his third grade girlfriend, but Daffy is trying to convince him she still loves him. This is mainly just fun road trip shenanigans for the two of them, and it has a sweeter ending at the end, but it takes until the end for that to really take into effect. But it's a solid episode, 8 out of 10. Episode 24, Mr. Wiener. Daffy Duck wants to win a hot dog contest so he can become known as Mr. Wiener. Porky Pig is going on a date with Petunia. Bugs Bunny is under doctor's orders to keep his stress low, and this episode's really fantastic. As someone who deals with screaming at the TV for characters to not be dumb syndrome, watching Porky take Daffy's advice for a whole episode was beyond frustrating, but in a good, fun way. But the ending is really cute for them, and it's a great send-off for both Yosemite and Porky by extent. I don't think the writers knew that there wasn't going to be a season 3, but these last few have had decent-ish send-offs for some of the supporting cast, and especially the neighbors, and this is an extremely fun episode. 9 out of 10. Episode 25, Super Rabbit. So, a bit of a detail that's interesting here is that Super Rabbit was the last aired episode in America, but in other countries it aired before the series finale Best Friends Redux. And I'd say that I'm gonna accept it coming before, because if this was the last episode, something would have been wrong. So the whole concept of Super Rabbit is, do you like Superman? Because I do. But genuinely, episodes of shows that just decide to do a movie's plot, but with the show's characters, kind of bore me to no end. Like, Looney Tunes and DC, sure, they're from the same company. You don't really have to do a crossover episode in your sitcom regarding that. The animation looks nice, I just don't go to the Looney Tunes show to see Bugs Bunny as Superman. There really is not much more to this episode. Oh look, Elmer Fudd's Lex Luthor. That's the most obvious casting choice since, maybe, I don't know, making Elmer Fudd Dr. Evil or something. Crazy ideas. 2 out of 10, really bad episode, probably the worst episode of the whole show. Episode 26, Best Friends Redux. The series finale of the Looney Tunes show is about Bugs having a childhood friend named Rodney Rabbit visit, and Daffy wondering if he is in fact Bugs' best friend. So he goes back in time using witch hazel magic, I believe, putting Rodney and Bugs' friendship off the menu. Best Friends Redux is genuinely one of those times where a Looney Tunes show episode feels far too short for the story's scope, and it's probably one of the only episodes that I think could have been stretched out to being a two-parter fine. But for what it is, Best Friends Redux is a good deconstruction on what the show has been up to up to this point. Daffy and Bugs' friendship. It's the outlyingly strong friendship from the series. And I don't think the show really has many answers. The two met randomly at a post office as Bugs was trying to send a message to Rodney. And I think that's where it is. The episode's solid, but rather underwhelming for a finale in the grand scheme of things. You could have expected something more, but Best Friends Redux plays things as by the books as you can with a time travel premise. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. And for season 2 as a whole, by every standard that I can place, season 2 is a massive improvement over the first. Better plots, better character usage, better animation, and more importantly, a stronger sense of comedy that made these episodes stand out way more than the previous season. Of my top 10 episodes of the entire show, 8 of them are from season 2, and in the bottom 10 episodes of the series, only 3 of them are from season 2, which means objectively, season 2's a miles better improvement. It's just unfortunate that right when the show was really finding its footing, cancellation came to its door and reaped what truly hadn't been sowed yet. The reputation that season 1 had with franchise fans did serious damage to the ratings, and it's harder to get people to check out the Looney Tunes show as adults if you have a sour impression. But even after this season, there's one more product in this era of Looney Tunes that I want to look at, and that's why we're going to be talking about Looney Tunes Rabbit's Run. So, viewer, if I told you there was a film that was Looney Tunes meets It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, would you believe me? Looney Tunes Rabbit Run was a 2015 direct-to-DVD movie first given to Walmart and then released into the wilds of DVD shelves everywhere like 1 month later. And then it came out on like Cartoon Network, because Cartoon Network always re-airs their DVD movies. And yeah, this movie came out after the show, but it shares enough in common to consider it sort of a finale to the era that the Looney Tunes show represented. Rabbit's Run takes place in New York, where Lola Bunny is an aspiring perfume artist. I think that's the job title. She accidentally invents invisibility, and upon shenanigans gets her and Bugs Bunny, her taxi driver, soon to turn into love interest, into a mad goose chase to get to Paris and submit her scent. Along the way, the film's loaded with adversaries, government agents Elmer Fudd and Cecil Turtle, Lola's former boss Giovanni Jones, and attempted bank robber Yosemite Sam. Not to mention the twist villain of the film who got spoiled in every trailer, Marvin the Martian. And I want to get the good out of the way because, to be honest, I kind of am very mixed on this entire film. There's a lot that goes wrong and there's a lot that's fine, but ultimately I kind of like this mildly, and yeah, let's talk about it. Most of the voice actors from the Looney Tunes show make their returns to their role, and they all do great jobs, and a lot of the comedy did get mild laughs. I never got super into it, but it's a fun time seeing these characters in what feels to be this incarnation one final time. This being said, this animation is super cheap. It feels like it was done on the fly, with the writing not being nearly as sharp as it could be, and the movie's got like 2 random musical numbers that I struggle to say are bad, but I don't know why they existed here. But also, the pacing of this film is like lacklusterly like fast and kind of gets into that like sludge feeling within things still. It winds up repeating gags from the show nearly word for word, and I think I want to talk about Lola here because the person they got to replace Kristen Wiig is not nearly as good. It feels like a Mad the cartoon from the 2010s interpretation of Lola Bunny, which makes sense because it's a voice actress who worked a lot on Mad as one of the writers for several things, and it just, I don't think it works in how Lola's energy is in this, because Kristen Wiig really invented this kind of Lola, and seeing this version of her so soon after, it's can be really hard for it to hold a candle. Rabbit's Run is the kind of film that screams wasted potential, because a finale to the Looney Tunes show as a DVD movie could be great, but I don't think this film had the energy and focus to serve as the finale to this era of the franchise, and I don't think I could recommend it to you who've only watched this show. But on top of that, I think its variations are also filled with just a bunch of weird choices. Something felt missing with Rabbit's Run, and I didn't connect with it. 5 out of 10. Hi, this is Editing Phineas. So 2 things that I'm going to be adding into this video with this little upgrade. I'm recording this like a week after I did the last recordings. Is that A, the Looney Tunes show is now on Tubi, so you can watch every single episode there, and you should totally do it. Give it some love. But also, I figured I'd include a ranking of every single episode stacked against each other, Ellis Mark style, because why not? There's only 52 of them. Let's do this thing. Ridiculous Journey, Super Rabbit, Point Laser Point, Fish and Visitors, Jailbird and Jail Bunny, The Murder, Casa de Calma, Devil Dog, Reunion, The Black Widow, Mrs. Pork Bunnies, Gribbler's Quest, Best Friends, French Fries, Newspaper Thief, The Shelf, Sunday Night Slice, Members Only, Off-Duty Cop, Working Duck, It's a Handbag, Monster Talent, Bugs and Daffy Get a Job, That's My Baby, The Grand Old Duck of York, Spread Those Wings and Fly, The Foghorn Leghorn Story, The Float, A Christmas Carol, To Bowl or Not to Bowl, Itsy Bitsy Gopher, Dear John, Best Friends Redux, Here Comes the Pig, Rebel Without a Glove, Year of the Duck, Bobcats on 3, Peel of Fortune, Weird and Big Truffle, Eligible Bachelors, Gossamer is Awesomer, Beauty School, Double Date, The Stud, The Nerd, The Average Joe, and The Saint, Mr. Wiener, The Shell Game, Semper Lie, Daffy Duck Esquire, Father Figures, DMV, You've Got Hate Mail, Customer Service. Whenever the last produced season of a show airs, there's really 2 roads that emerge from it. Does the studio renew it or continue and leave the show behind? And for Warner Bros., 52 episodes of the Looney Tunes show was enough. Now, to be fair, they pulled Mystery Incorporated at the same length, so I think it was a studio standard practice around then, but the show wasn't working for them, and the Looney Tunes show would be announced canceled on July 29th, 2014. It's not the full end of the era that date Rabbit's Run comes out, but in 2015 the show would quickly move on to Wabbit, or its later renamed New Looney Tunes. Now, the thing with the show is Wabbit lasted for 5 years. Now, I gotta ask, guys, especially for the Gen Alphas in the chat, do you ever think about Wabbit? Because from an outsider's perspective, it's hard to think of a less relevant Looney Tunes show. It lasted a mere 22 episodes on Cartoon Network before it got kicked over to Boomerang for the rest of the show's run, where they released about 134 more episodes, but no one mentions this ever, right? That's a sign that the show didn't make a splash. If you're falling in a forest and there's no one around, you're Wabbit. Mind you, these episodes had 2 shorts in them, so there's like 268 different stories that just came out for the Boomerang channel and streaming service, which is crazy. The new Looney Tunes era would come crashing down with the launch of HBO Max. Warner Bros. Decides to pivot directions again with the launch of HBO Max by giving Pete Braungart, veteran animator who, amongst other things, created Uncle Grandpa, they gave him reign over the franchise, which he's had to this day, unless they fired him after the day the Earth blew up, which, knowing the Warner Bros. Higher-ups, is likely, but nothing can be noted publicly about that yet from what I can notice. But looking over the show again, I think it's genuinely sad how from 2011 to 2015 we got an era that tried so much new, and yet after it, I don't think Coyote vs. Acme withstanding, the Looney Tunes has never felt fresh since. To be completely fair, I've not watched much of the 2 eras that came out after this one. I've seen like Space Jam 2 and The Day the Earth Blew Up. But from what I noticed, the only time that I feel like there's been any buzz about Looney Tunes has been when Coyote vs. Acme got screwed over. And now that we saw the release of The Day the Earth Blew Up and that colossal failure managed by Warner Brothers, I mean, sure, Space Jam 2 happened, but in the past 3 years, have you guys seen anyone think about Space Jam 2? I mean, I sure have been thinking about Space Jam 2, but anyone who actually matters. We've witnessed a franchise that's a proper mascot for their studio fall into being just another property for them, and it didn't always used to be this way. I take the experimental age of the franchise in the 2000s and 2010s over this any day of the week, because it's so important for any given character to reinvent, so you can always keep seeing how stories get told for years on end. It's part of the reason why I'm always curious with these sequels to major franchises. So much of a story is how it evolves, regardless if it's good or bad. In the world of film, but especially animation, experimentation is second to none in keeping stories and characters alive. For all the show's misses, and don't get me wrong, the Looney Tunes show had a bunch of misses. The creatives who helmed it never feared taking a risk. Characters like Lola Bunny got reinvented to a way that she actually stands out as a character instead of just being a nothing in Space Jam. Characters got to interact in ways they've never had before and never will again. When do we think we'll ever see Daffy Duck get a girlfriend who winds out bringing out the best in him? Or the show's fantastic dissecting of dynamics like the one Daffy had with Porky there? Or how characters so beloved that they've stood the test of the time to the point that they've survived a century on Earth, outlasting the minds of anyone who brought them to life, would survive in the modern suburban world. It's a show that took risk after risk, and as much disrespect and cries that they changed what fans loved cried out, they still made one of the best versions of the Looney Tunes. And most of us grew up on the classic shorts, but if you were a kid in the early 2010s, this was your Looney Tunes, with all the scratches, bumps, emotions, swerves, tunes, and laughs that came along for the ride. I'm the one and only Phineas. Thank you for watching Why the Looney Tunes Show Matters. Hey, so this is my outro if you're sticking around till this point. You probably have noticed that I didn't really upload at all in March. This video, not really... I don't think this video is getting out in March. I think it's going to be an early April thing. But the biggest underlying thing for that is I had a trip I was going on. And then the other thing with YouTube is I'm trying to find my rhythm with things again. Because I tried the weekly thing for a while, which is fun, you know. But I was running out of topics that I really wanted to like weekly video into. I don't think I'm someone who is strongest when I'm talking about what the current trends of the day. I think I'm much more of a historian on this channel, or a nostalgia-torian, as you would call it. Maybe, I don't know. But so yeah, this has been a big video to make. It's got the longest body of work that I've ever had to analyze for a video. Rankin Bass Marathon withstanding, I don't know if that would. I don't think it would actually. Actually, I think this is probably. It's close, but this is all in one video, so it's a little more interesting. But I got some other projects I want to get done in April, which should be fun within things, and it'll be fun to figure out whatever kind of rhythm works for my channel. Been taking me a while to figure that out, but anyone who's tuned in until now, I'm really happy to have you here for the ride. I've got a lot of stuff I want to do still for this year, and I want to make the push for 1,000. Hopefully by the end of it, you know. I think this video might get me there. I think, but I should never be too confident within this. YouTube works in mysterious ways, and that's part of the beauty of it. Honestly, follow-up content, maybe. I don't know what the whole idea for it is yet. I'm tempted to dive into Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated and handle the other Warner Bros. Show from this time period, and just kind of have a sister video essay to this, because they're both the same size, and I've been meaning to watch Mystery Incorporated. Looney Tunes show I watched growing up, but Mystery Incorporated I barely watched, really, but I hear great things about. But yeah, thank you anyone who tuned in. I'm always amazed by the amount of feedback I wind up getting when people do. And I hope this video makes your day better if anyone watched it. So yeah, take care and bye.